Welcome back to another episode of Biblio Files, a show from the Ann Arbor District Library in Michigan that's all about books. Each episode, we take a few minutes to answer one book-related question. This time, we're looking at a favorite book of short stories. With me today is Amanda and Lucy, and I'm Christopher. Lucy, what did you pick for us this episode?
I picked a pretty recent collection of short stories. It came out in 2020 by an author named Danielle Evans, and it is called The Office of Historical Corrections, and it's actually a novella and stories. And it is, she's a Black woman, and so she's writing about that is definitely part of it, but she's writing about the Midwest and female friendships and rivalries there. She's also writing about, like she says, thematically, she's writing about apologies, correction, and not specifically about being Black, but like because many of the characters are and they exist in the world as Black, that shapes the social and the economic, the cultural conditions that come up in these stories. So she's just an amazing writer. And what I find when I'm reading a collection of short stories is like each story I love and I get so absorbed in, and then you move on to the next one. And I think that's why I love reading them. But then I notice that my retention of them is like, I'll remember 2 stories or something outstanding. And then the rest of them, I'm like, what, once you review them, you're like, oh yeah, but it's just funny. So the 2 standout ones that from this book, one was called Why Won't Women Just Say What They Want? And it's a story where this artist is apologizing to women, and he's doing it as sort of an art installation. And he thinks he's apologizing. So it will be like to the long suffering first wife. And then this sort of apology, but it's not an apology because it's like, I'm sorry that you thought and then it'll be like to the ex-girlfriend or to the woman who wasn't sure what was happening, but couldn't say no. So it gets more and more serious. And then, and people respond to the art. So he keeps adding to his list and he thinks his apologies are amazing. And he has this installation. And then you see it from the women's point of view and how they react to it. And that one was just really, I hadn't seen the story written in that way. And I loved that. And then the novella, the title piece, the Office of Historical Corrections, is about 2 women who work for this public office where they kind of go out into the public and they put stickers on things to correct them. So it could be in a bakery that has like a Juneteenth cake and they'll say like, this celebrates this. And they're like, no, that, so all over their cities and where they live, but it's also about this rivalry that they have. And then it gets into like the insistence of innocence by the people who have done the harm. So they're going back to like sundown towns and sort of this journey through the history of racism in the US, and they have part of the Great Migration. So it's very hard to talk about a collection of short stories, but I think the way that she weaves in these very prevalent themes, but also has these characters that are memorable and unusual, really struck me. And it took her 10 years to write this. So it's amazing that there's like this Me Too story, and there's this story that talks about like so much of the anti-Black racism that we've seen being talked about recently, but she's been writing it for the last 10 years. So that was a very long way to say that I really enjoyed the collection called The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. So Amanda, what did you pick?
So before I go ahead and talk about my pick for this week, I totally agree with what you said, Lucy, about just short story collections in general. You pick up a book, there's maybe 8 to 10 short stories, and you have like 2 or 3 that stand out, that stick with you after the book. Even though you enjoyed all of them or many of them, there are always a couple that stand out. Part of the thing with short stories is some of those you really want more, you want to go in more with those characters and go forward even further. And so for some of the times, those are the ones that I end up remembering. So I don't read a lot of short story collections. I kind of read them as they come along. It's not something I seek out. for whatever reason. But the short story I want to talk about today is called Turtle Face and Beyond by Arthur Bradford. Excuse me. It was published in 2015, and last late winter, early spring, a coworker recommended it to me. And I thought, cool, short stories. I could read like one short story every day on my lunch break. And I started that, and then the library shut down and the book sat in my office for a while. And then I got the book back and I finished it, and it's a funny story. One of the things that sold me on the book was my coworker's recommendation, but also there's a little blurb by David Sedaris on the back of it. And I totally enjoy David Sedaris's short stories. So I thought, great. And the book is totally a read-alike for things like David Sedaris because it's dark, it's dry, it's witty, it's weird, it's offbeat. You've got these strange characters. So the book is narrated by a man named Georgie, and the stories are all by him. And it's just the variety of people and strange instances and situations he gets himself as he travels across the country and beyond. I want to read to you a little blurb that describes a couple of the short stories, because I was thinking of how I could list a couple of the synopses, and I can't do that. So the first one, the main one, is called Turtle Face, and it is basically turtle versus human face, as you can imagine. And then we have prosthetically limbed lovers, a snake-bitten hitchhiker turned wedding crasher, a lawyer at the end of his rope, a menage a trois at Thailand's resort TikTok, and a whole host of near disasters, narrow escapes, and complicated victories. So there's just these strange circumstances and situations, and I love the way the character narrated them and told them. And I love a good, strange, bizarre, like, you don't find out all the answers from all the characters, and like strange towns and strange settings. And I just really enjoyed the book. It's dark, it's funny, but it's not dark as in like dark, but it's just like the dark sense of humor. It's more funny, strange, but also a little funny, haha, because I was laughing out loud. But the stories are short enough. It's an easy, simple book to get through. I really, really enjoyed it. So that is Turtle Face and Beyond by Arthur Bradford. Christopher, what are you feeling?
Well, I love short stories so much. I just think a collection of short stories that's well written is really so engaging and so enchanting, because each story is kind of its own world. So I chose the 2016 book by Kelly Link called Get in Trouble. And one thing I love about these stories by Kelly Link is that you never get the full story of what's going on in the world or why things are the way they are, and it doesn't matter. You know, this kind of doomed romance set in a world where superheroes exist is about the romance in the against the backdrop of superheroes being real. Two young girls arguing over which robot boyfriend is the better one is all about the girls. And it just happens to take place in a world where you can buy robot boyfriends. And so I love that about her stories. So much is just taken for granted, and you don't need to know why things exist the way they do. They just do. So accept it and enjoy the story. The first story in this collection is called The Summer People, and it is so good. It just grabbed me from the very beginning. It's about one young girl teaching another girl how to take care of this very strange house where it seems like there are some strange fairies living in the house, but you never see them. And they make weird little things. Anyway, it's just so gripping. You never really find out what's really going on in the house, and you don't need to, because it's all about these relationships between the main characters in the collection. So I really love this book. There are superheroes, fairies, vampires, robots, space travel, pocket universes, but it's really about the characters that Kelly Link puts together. So if you haven't read anything by her, I highly recommend this book, and that is Get in Trouble. I think that came out in 2016. So We love short stories. And we would love to know what books of short stories that you've enjoyed so much. You can leave us a comment on the AADL page, and we'd love to know what you think. So until next time, take care.